For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rose Deal, and I'm with the Orange County Economic Development Office. I'd like to welcome you all to the breakout session, Prepare Well to Exit Well, with Jonathan Brabrand of Transact Capital Partners. As a reminder, this session is recorded. I've hit the recording button. We will upload these later for on-demand viewing in the future. At this time, if I can please request that everyone mute their mics to give Jonathan our full attention. If you have any questions, please just add them into the chat box and I'll ask them towards the end of the session. Jonathan is an author, entrepreneur, and expert in the field of advising business owners on the sale of their companies. Jonathan is the managing director of Transact Capital Partners, a boutique M&A advisory firm headquartered in Richmond. He's spent 20 years helping business owners within a wide variety of industries sell their companies to their ideal buyer and achieve the exit outcome they've dreamed of. In his new book, The $100 Million Exit, Your Roadmap to the Ultimate Payday, it analyzes large mergers and acquisition successes and failures to draw practical, actionable advice that company owners can implement to increase the value of their business and to be better prepared for an exit. Jonathan has joined us to share insights into what business owners can do to achieve a sale-ready posture and know when the time is right to exit. Please welcome Jonathan Brabrand.
All right, Rose, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm so happy to be with you all today. What a very cool experience this Quad County Business Summit has been all day. I hope you all have enjoyed it as much as I have. With the time that we have here, I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to move a little briskly to make sure we cover a lot of this material, but just towards the end, I will put into the chat a 2-page handout that I've created that has a lot of the details of what we'll be talking about, so you don't feel like you have to take notes or you might miss something. Not only will it be recorded, but we'll have a little handout to go with it at the end. So let's get started. This first slide here sets the stage to remind us that 100% of business owners will exit their business at some point. It's an absolute certainty. It's like death and taxes. You will exit your business at some point. The question is really, is it on your terms or on someone else's terms? Is it, with your head held high or your back against the wall? And so what we are talking about today is making sure that it's with your head held high and it's on your terms. The 2 questions that Rose mentioned that we're going to touch on today that I think are really applicable and important for business owners, regardless of where you are in your time horizon, are these. 1, are you sale ready? What does that mean? And why would you want to be sale ready? And 2, how would you know when the time is right to exit? And so we'll jump into those in just a second, but a couple slides to lay the foundation before that. As Rose mentioned, I've been helping business owners sell their companies for over 20 years now. And here are some of the triggers that I've seen that have brought my clients to the table to exit their business. It could be a retirement of the owner, health issues, industry pressures that are making them need to either partner with someone larger or face going out of business, changes in family dynamics, or even an unsolicited offer from a buyer they weren't expecting. And the key commonality that I want to point out here is that these are all things that happen to a business owner and puts them in a reactive state. So these things happen really with no involvement from the owner, and the owner has to decide how to respond to them. And the reason we're talking today is, will you as a business owner be ready if one of these things were to occur? Would you be ready to make the best exit possible if that opportunity arose? And so that's really the reason for this discussion. This next slide here, one of the things I think can be helpful in talks like this is trying to simplify overly complex ideas and concepts. And so when we talk about exit options, it can seem very broad and nebulous. And I want to just concentrate it down to something very simple and easy to understand. If you think about the entire waterfront of exit options for your business, and again, whether that's in 1 year or 10 years or 30 years, there are essentially 2 categories of options, internal and external. And within each of those, there are 2 subcategories. And in internal exit options are family members or employees. External are financial buyers and strategic buyers. I'm just going to take a second to touch on each of those. So in the internal category, you have family members and employees. The reason it's called internal is they're already connected to you. There's a degree of familiarity and trust that exists with those internal exit options. The challenge can be, though, with that group is, do they have the financial wherewithal to take over your business? And oftentimes they don't have a pot of cash that they're sitting on. And so business owners will need to structure something over time to facilitate a transaction with an internal party. But also the second consideration is, do they have the willingness and the aptitude to take over the business? And sometimes as much as you may want for both of those things to exist, they may not. And so as you think about internal options, and I encourage business owners to constantly evaluate all of these that we'll talk about, not to hone in on one too early. Just keep in mind, as you see your employees team, your leadership team, and your family members, if they're involved with the business, as you see them grow and mature, keeping an eye out for, is there an aptitude to run the business and a desire on their parts to one day take over the business. In the external category, which is really where I spend my professional time, is helping business owners find external exit options. We have strategic buyers and financial buyers. Strategic buyers are companies that already exist either in your industry or in a related industry that might want to acquire your business to help take them where they want to go. And that's a key distinction between these two subcategories of external buyers. Strategic buyers that we just talked about have a plan, a strategy that they're pursuing, and they may be looking for acquisitions that they can add into their corporate entity to help them fulfill their strategic plan faster, better, more efficiently. It helps them along a path that they've already chosen. The other type of external exit option here are financial buyers. And these are groups of individuals who've raised capital to invest in private businesses and to help them grow. And here, they are really looking to back the plan that you have. So unlike those strategic buyers who have a plan, and the question is, would acquiring your business help further their goals? A financial buyer is really doesn't have a pre-existing plan. They're looking to make investment in businesses, private businesses that have compelling strategies of their own and help facilitate their growth and development and ultimately exit down the road again. And so we see business owners think about all four of those options from internal through external and evaluate them as they get closer and closer to a time when they might want to exit. So when we talk about sale-ready posture and how you might achieve that, the reason is so that you'd be ready if one of those triggers were to occur. How we do it is really around these three topics, and there's plenty to be talked about in each of these, but I'll just touch on them quickly. The first one is establishing industry relationships, and this is probably the most novel of these three. And it involves really raising your profile within your industry and building relationships with peers in the industry, maybe even competitors in your industry, but folks that might be good partners for you down the line well before you need them to be a partner or you need anything from them. And this does not involve sharing any kind of confidential information. The actual content that I would propose being a part of these conversations is really stuff that you could find they could find on your website. But it's really putting a face with a name and beginning a track record of them keeping an eye out for what you are doing with your business, so that at some point in the future, if you were to hire someone like me and I were to call them and say, this company that we've been working with that you've been following for the last several years is now ready to talk more seriously about a partnership or an acquisition, having that track record of, oh yeah, I'm so glad you called. I've been hoping this day would come. I've been watching and enjoy connecting with them every 6 months or a year. And I'm excited that now we get to actually delve more deeply and talk more seriously, versus I've never heard of that company. I'll take a look, but I'm not sure if it's something I'd be interested in or not. So it's really laying the groundwork with larger peers in your industry or related industries that really just start to raise your profile in the industry, so that at some point in the future, those groups may be good partners for you. And the side benefit for that is also that you may pick up things in those conversations in terms of what they're looking for, what in acquisitions, or what led them to make an acquisition they made recently. If they're a public company, you can easily find out what acquisitions they've made. That type of information may help inform your strategy so that you might pivot your business slightly to help create something that you know a buyer is looking for, rather than create something that you hope there are buyers that would be interested in. I wouldn't advocate making a hard turn based on that type of information, but if you pick up something that helps influence your strategy, that could be a very helpful outcome from those conversations. Strategic planning, very quickly, is vitally important and helps is a key part of being sale ready. There are lots of types of strategic planning, from very complex and expensive to very simple. To be honest, it doesn't matter to me where you fall on that spectrum. What I suggest is a strategic planning process that really has three core elements. It is to create an annual plan about what you want to do in the next 12 months, track results against that plan, and then thirdly, at the end of that year, report out the results compared to plan to someone who is not connected to your business. So not an employee, perhaps not a spouse if they are involved in the business, but someone that is outside of the business, an attorney, an accountant, someone at the business development company that needs to hear sort of the whole story and doesn't just automatically know if you reference some event, positive or negative, they kind of know the story. It helps to keep, there's a level of accountability that comes from reporting results to someone outside of the company. It also helps practice the skill of talking about your business at a very high level, kind of where we've been, why we made those decisions, what happened, and then obviously you repeat it year after year, so where we're headed for the next 12 months. Those are skills that will be very valuable when the time comes to exit, because you'll have gotten into the habit of talking about your business at this high level and helping to communicate where it's been, where it is now, and where it's headed in the future. And then lastly is succession planning. And this is a reminder to business owners, which can be difficult, particularly in the early years of a business formation, that if your business can't succeed or continue to operate without your day-to-day involvement, you've got a job, you don't have a business. And that can be very lucrative, and many people only want to own their own job, but jobs aren't really saleable. They provide good current income, but if you want to build something that you can actually sell and have an exit from, it needs to be a business that can operate without you. And so developing a plan where over time you're starting to step away from the business and hand off responsibility to others, even if that handoff process isn't complete, and it could be in the very early stages, will make your business more valuable, to be able to show that there is a plan for your eventual exit and that the business continuity will continue. So those are three topics, admittedly very quickly, that I would advise you to look into to become sale ready, before the time comes to actually exit. The second question that we talked about is, how will you know when the time is right? And really it's you would look at these three different categories. No one has a crystal ball, but the easiest way to answer this question is to look at these three categories and ascertain the quality and the outlook for each of them. So the first one is the M&A markets. How healthy are they? Just like you'd want to sell your house in an active real estate market, you'd want to sell your business in an active M&A market. And for the sake of time, I will just tell you it is a hot M&A market, and it will, for a variety of powerful supply and demand dynamics, it will continue to be a hot M&A market. So that gets a check for the foreseeable future. Even right now in the middle of a pandemic, it is an attractive time to sell your business. The next one is your industry, and we look at that next because the health and outlook of your industry is actually more important than the health and outlook of your company. It is easier to sell a B company in a hot sector than it is to sell an A+ company in an out of favor sector. The sector dynamics, the industry dynamics overshadow your company. and its outlook. And so looking into your industry, its outlook, and how whether it's kind of headwinds or tailwinds on the horizon is important. You want that that next period of time in your industry to be as positive as possible, and hopefully without any uncertainty or major shifts that could make it less attractive. And then lastly is your company. And this is a reminder that you really want to exit your business and call it the seventh inning of a baseball game. Business owners need to remember that buyers of businesses are buying the future, not the past. And so the fact that you had your best year ever last year or the year before is great for you, but business buyers want to see what's going to happen next year and the year after, and what the business will be doing under their ownership. And so waiting too long, waiting until the ninth inning of this baseball game, or even extra innings, is a big mistake that I see business owners make time and time again. You want to be able to exit when there is an attractive runway of growth ahead of the business. And you've come off of some nice growth historically, but you want to make sure that there's something left for the next buyer that they'd be willing to pay an attractive price for. Speaking of price, business owners often ask me about how much their company is worth. And so very quickly, I will just say that business valuations are tricky, but they combine a science element. There are models and valuation methodologies that people like we have at our firm can give you a formal business valuation using models that look at your future cash flow and the risk associated with that, and other methodologies that we can use. But really where we earn our living is around the art of private businesses. That involves finding buyers when the time is right for your exit, finding buyers that need your business more than anyone else and are willing to pay a premium above the kind of theoretical value that the science aspect can provide. And there may not be many out there, but you just need one. Ultimately, it'd be nice to have a few more that are in that kind of spike bid category, which is really the confluence of science and art. And so private businesses, the valuations are really in the eye of the beholder, and we see wide ranges of buyers bidding on our clients that have the exact same information, where there might be a doubling from the low bid to the high bid on a process that we run. And the trick is finding those buyers at the upper end of valuation that need your business and want it more than anyone else. And that typically involves a strong connection with the owner and the team, and a fit. You're like the last piece of a puzzle that they're trying to build, and they're willing to pay more to complete their puzzle to get to where they're trying to go. One of the ways that you can increase value, which I assume is probably something on the minds of all business owners, is to really do one of two things. One is to increase the actual mathematical value of your cash flows to grow the bottom line, which is important. But another one that's perhaps easier to do in tandem is to reduce your perceived risk. So when we think about Finance 101, business valuations are a combination of the future cash flow of a business discounted back at some perceived risk value. And so if you can reduce risk, perceived risk in your business by buyers, you'll have grown your business without even changing the cash flow. And so this is why you hear recurring revenue is more valuable, diversified customer base, having a depth of management team, having geographic and product and end market diversity. All those things are perceived by buyers as reducing risk, and therefore are attractive to sellers of businesses to try to build into their business so that buyers will pay a higher price for them. So thinking about ways that you can reduce perceived risk. And I use the word perceived because it may be a risk that you're comfortable with as a business owner, but if you are outside of your business looking in, what are some risks that you might perceive, and take steps to try to avoid or mitigate those as best you can. We have just a few minutes left, and I would like to have a little bit of Q&A, although I will say we got started late, so I may go over a minute or two if that's all right with Rose. But I'm going to briefly go through top 10 M&A mistakes that I've seen to help give you a sense of some things to avoid when the time comes to exit. So the first one we've already talked about, that's waiting too long to sell. The second one we've mentioned as well, which is not having a succession plan in place, not having someone to hand off the baton to. Number three is poor positioning. This is just really a reminder that when the time comes to exit, you get to position your business, you get to describe your company and its outlook however you would like, as long as it's intellectually honest and supportable. And so thinking about that more broadly than you might otherwise is really important. You don't want to limit yourself as you describe your business and the opportunity set that's up before it. You want to make that as big as possible, even if it includes opportunities that you're not actively pursuing today, that ones that you could, under a new ownership or with a new partner or with a different type of capital structure, go after. That makes your business more attractive and valuable. The next one is doing the housekeeping items, preparing ahead of time, getting your documentation lined up, having an accountant look over your financials, some of the things that we've heard today through other segments in the Business Summit. Number 5 is avoiding prejudging buyers. It's really difficult at the beginning of a process to know who your ultimate buyer will be. And so prejudging buyers by excluding them from the process based on reasons you might think they might not be a good buyer is sometimes ill-advised. There'll be time later in the process as you get to know buyers and you get to see how they react to your company, that if you at that point want to move in a different direction, you can. You always can back away from groups that you're talking to. But if you don't include them in the process to begin with, you'll never know. And so we always encourage our clients to be a little bit more broad thinking, open-minded at the beginning of a process, and not to prejudge buyers for good or for bad. Sometimes a favored buyer that you're just sure is going to be the ultimate one doesn't pan out. And so having other options at the table is very helpful. Number 6 is avoiding avoidable mistakes. And the handcuffs here is a reminder that we were selling a business that really at the 11th hour, the buyer called me to say that they had learned that our head of sales was a convicted felon and had been served time in prison in the 80s for cocaine distribution. And did we know that? And why hadn't we told them that? And we didn't know that. And that's why we hadn't told them that. And so that was a surprise that completely derailed the process that didn't need to. And this executive knew that they were doing a background check and should have said something well before that. We could have gotten ahead of it. Thinking about surprises that you think would be poorly received by a buyer, and just getting ahead of them and explaining them for better or for worse. Ideally, while there are multiple buyers that you're still talking to, so that if one overreacts to it, you have other buyers that you can gauge how they react to it, and you're not committed to one group when that news is shared. 7 is an over-reliance on price. So obviously we're selling companies for our clients to maximize price, and that's a big part of it. But I've seen our clients time and time again take the second or third highest bid, not the top one, for a variety of reasons that are really smart. It involves really thinking about who the best partner for the business, who will be the best steward of the name, who will be the best partner for our employees, who offers the clearest fit with what that business owner wants to do post-closing in their role. There's lots of other intangible things that are just as important as at price. And at some point, an extra % or 2 in the purchase price can be more than overcome by some of these important non-economic factors as well. Number 8 is not having a strategic plan. We've talked about that one. Number 9 is the lack of negotiating leverage. This is where having an advisor like us and other buyers in the process is really important. It's really hard for a business owner to negotiate an attractive, optimal deal with an experienced buyer on the other side of the table if they have no negotiating leverage. They can always opt to back away, but sometimes, particularly if one of those triggers is what brought you to the table that we talked about at the beginning, that may not be a very viable alternative. And so having negotiating leverage through competition from other buyers is really, really important all the way through until you finally close the deal and the funds are in your account. And lastly is an overly complex deal structure. Sometimes people in our profession or attorneys, if we have any of those on the call today, are guilty of making the deal overly complex. And the risk is that deal fatigue sets in on both sides, and ultimately people just throw up their hands and say, this isn't worth it. I like to say that if you can't describe your deal in terms that a middle schooler could understand, maybe without the numbers, but within the concepts, you may have a structure that's too complex for your own good, and ultimately will not be very successful. So that is it. There's another section here that we won't go on today about the process, but I'm happy to talk about that at other times. And I will leave with this concept, which is I'm happy to talk with anyone on a confidential basis for 30 minutes, no strings attached, no obligation. If you'd like to learn more about these topics or talk about something specific to your business. And I do have the book that Rose mentioned that's out on Amazon and Barnes & Noble that talks about these topics and others. So I will pause there and happy to take any questions in the few minutes we have left.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Jonathan, do you have a floor for the size of deals that you deal with?
That's a great question.
In other words, are there any parameters on the size of the company and what they may possibly be worth?
Generally, about $1 million in revenue is where we would start, and then we go all the way up from there.
Is there an industry you won't work with?
No, ma'am.
Okay, because I have a client that I've been working with for a long time, and the time has come. And it's around, even with the pandemic, it's around a $3 million business.
Mm-hmm.
And revenue, not including the property and all. So it's actually got a, pretty decent value.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give your name and I'm going to give your name to this guy and ask him to look over your website and think about this. I'm trying to push him along. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, what do you recommend for the person, this has been their baby their whole life, and how do they emotionally get ready to retire or to sell off the property?
That's a great question. And, probably the easiest or the best answer I have for that is reminding or introducing the concept or reminding them if they've heard it before that, the business exit is not the end of the line. It's not something to be delayed and avoided because it's the end of the end. It's actually, that creates new chapters in 3 different ways. And so having owners think about these new chapter creations, I think is important. One, it creates a new chapter for the business owner and his or her family about the capital that will be created from the transaction and what they can do with that, whether it's for, setting up grandkids, education funds or philanthropy, or the ability to invest in startups and help other, entrepreneurs on the journey. There's lots of things that are exciting and fulfilling that takes the place of business ownership for the business owner. But it also creates new chapters for employees where opportunities that maybe didn't exist in the private company setting are suddenly opened up as they become part of a larger entity after the acquisition. We've seen that happen time and time again. So it can be an exciting new chapter for the employees and an exciting new chapter for the company. And a lot of business owners, when they get over that feeling of letting loose of their baby, really enjoy keeping track of the heights that their business were able to attain in chapter 2 or chapter 3 that frankly, and I think they would admit, they wouldn't have been able to do on their own. That's part of the reason why we got to the exit to begin with. Finding a partner that can take the business in new directions. And that could mean with more capital, but it could also mean with, in partnership with a strategic buyer that has just access to more technology or company or markets or customers, but watching their business continue to grow in ways it couldn't under their ownership can be an exciting thing to look forward to as well.
And so would you recommend, you just talked about the floor a couple minutes ago, would you recommend your book is beneficial for someone below the floor that maybe you would not work directly with, but still a good buy, the book?
Oh, absolutely. The concept of the book and the title is really aspirational. The idea is throughout it, I looked at large transactions that I've worked on or interviewed people who had, that were valued for over $100 million, and picked out keys to success that they would say, help drive those outsized valuations, and translated them to very tangible things that business owners of any size can do to kind of give themselves a premium wherever they are along the way. So yes, it's something that very small businesses all the way up, I think, benefit from.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.